Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, and today, for your viewing entertainment and pleasure, we have a two-battle compilation of teams doing exactly the wrong thing and exactly the right thing when victory is but seconds away. First, we have the closing minutes of an Asaccio replay submitted by Turrets Syndrome. I see what you did there. Who was quite understandably beside himself with rage over the way his team threw away a guaranteed win. We're following Turrets as he closes in for a stealth torpedo attack on an enemy Lenin on the other side of this island here. Now his surface detection range is 5.4 kilometers. Unfortunately, any chance of getting a sneak torpedo attack off is completely ruined by the presence of enemy carrier aircraft, so he's already taking fire even before he clears the island. So with any hope of a stealth attack gone, and given the number of ships shooting at him, a very slim chance that he's going to survive this, he decides that he may as well get as close as he possibly can to the Lenin while he's still alive to maximise the chances of his torpedoes actually hitting something. Of course, now that the Lenin knows that he's here, he's obviously going to be actively manoeuvring to avoid it. Well, I say he's obviously going to be actively manoeuvring to avoid torpedoes, but you never know, he might still be sailing in a straight line. Either way, there's very little chance that Turrets is going to survive this. And then, a glimmer of hope. He's gone undetected. Oh, but the Lenin is manoeuvring. It looks like those torpedoes are going to miss. And no, the aircraft were just circling around to make a final attack run. And yeah, Turrets is dead, and the Lenin has avoided all of the torpedoes. However, take a look at the scores. Despite the fact that Turret just died, his team are still not far short, 400 points ahead, and control all 4 of the caps. So, outnumbered 5-4, but with a cap and point advantage, you'd think it would be a good idea at this stage for the surviving 4 members of his team to just concentrate on staying alive, especially given that there's less than 5 minutes of this match left. Unfortunately for some of them, that's going to be a lot easier said than done. The carrier is spotted by the enemy Sims and is under attack. The Vladivostok is on very low health. He's spotted by and being shot at by the Bayern, and the enemy Vanguard and Lenin are also steaming up that flank and are going to be in a position to shoot at him as well very, very soon. The Ranger has just been sunk by the Sims. The Vladivostok is almost certainly about to die. If you look at the map, you can see that the guider thought that he could take on the enemy carrier, an assumption that turns out to be extremely wrong because, yep, he's just gotten himself sunk as well. Although, in the case of the friendly destroyer, at the point where he started going for the carrier, he was not detected and did have the option of just turning around and bugging out. But, with an enemy carrier in play, it's extremely unlikely that either of the other surviving surface ships would have been able to remain hidden for the rest of the match. So you can kind of understand his decision to attempt to attack the carrier. But regardless of his assumptions or his intentions, it didn't work, he's dead, and the team have lost even more points. And yet, at the same time, even with the loss of points that the team have just suffered for the loss of 3 ships, and the fact that the enemy team are flipping 2 of the caps, and the fact that they're about to lose more points as this Vladivostok dies, they can still win. All that Admiral Hipper has to do is survive for the next 2.5 minutes. There is no way that the enemy team, even if they flip all of the caps, there just isn't enough time remaining for them to gain enough points to win without also sinking the Admiral Hipper. Which begs the question, why has the Hipper been sailing toward the enemy team for the last 4 minutes? And why is he still sailing toward the enemy team? In case you hadn't noticed, when this video started, he was over here. The best possible place for him to avoid detection and wait out the end of the match. Of course, 4 minutes ago, he wasn't necessarily going to know that he was going to be in this situation now. But now he does know that he's in this situation, and he's still trying to fight when he should be running away. How's he supposed to disengage now, though? I mean, they can see him. Well, yeah, but he's in a pretty fast, heavy cruiser. In fact, the only thing on the enemy team that's fast enough to catch him, if he turns around and runs away now, is the Sims. But the Sims is never going to sink him. The best thing the Sims can do right now is keep him spotted for the carrier aircraft and the Bayern. So the biggest threat right now is the Bayern. It's not the Furious. That's a Tier 8 heavy cruiser. The Furious is a Tier 6 carrier. And the Hipper's anti-aircraft firepower is pretty good. The Sims had less than 4,000 health when we last saw him, so he's not going to want to risk shooting. That means the only real threat at the moment is that Bayern. And he's hit. And he's burning. And this is the right thing to do. Eliminate the Bayern, and then you can get out of there before the other two battleships show up. I mean, the Hippo shouldn't have been in this situation in the first place, but given that he is in this situation, this is the way to get out of it. And he's done it. He's sunk the Bayern. Now, with 40 seconds of this match remaining, you're 300 points ahead. Can you just survive? What are you doing? Why are you shooting at the Vanguard? Okay, the Vanguard has fired and missed. And with 30 seconds of this match remaining, that means the Vanguard is only going to get to shoot once more. And the Sims, who up until now has been content to merely keep the Hipper spotted, realises that if they don't sink that ship in the next 20 seconds, they're going to lose. Right now, all the Hipper has to do, knowing that the Vanguard is only going to get one more shot off, is not turn and give him broadside. So with 3 seconds remaining, 190 points ahead, the Hipper turns and gives him broadside. As for how Turret Syndrome felt at the result of that match, I think the correct phrase is apoplectic with rage. Entirely understandable. Well anyway, moving along swiftly, and on the same broad theme, this is Runner 357, former World of Warships community contributor and Swedish Marine, and fairly regular World of Warships Twitch live streamer. As you can see, he has the USS Ohio. Now, for any of you not familiar with this ship, and it's a fairly new ship, so I wouldn't be surprised if that meant a lot of you, this is basically at Tier 10 to the Montana what the Georgia is to the Iowa at Tier 9. Do you remember about a month ago there were a lot of USS Georgia clips popping up, and the Georgia was basically the USS Iowa, except on with 18-inch rather than 16-inch guns. Well, the Ohio is more of the same. It's basically the USS Montana, on with 18-inch rather than 16-inch guns. There are some other differences, but that's the major thing. It's worth bearing in mind, of course, that in common with other battleships on with 18-inch guns that are not the Yamato or the Musashi, these 457mm guns are not of sufficient caliber to overmatch the 32mm of bow armour that you typically find on Tier 8, 9 and 10 battleships. Only the Yamato and the Musashi can do that because they have 460mm guns. They just cross that overmatch threshold. What's interesting is that despite the fact that the Ohio and the Georgia at Tier 9 have guns that are slightly less caliber than the Yamato or the Musashi, the Ohio and Georgia's guns actually do slightly more armour-piercing damage per hit, although they do have one less gun overall than their Japanese opponents. Despite the fact that they have 4 turrets, one more, it's only 2 guns per turret, not 3. So that's 8 guns compared to 9. And in addition to having that one extra gun, albeit with slightly inferior armour-piercing potential damage, the Yamato does also enjoy a 4-kilometre firing range advantage over the Ohio. And it's not that the Ohio's guns are short range, they're not. They'll fire out to a range of 21.6 kilometres, it's just that the Yamato's guns are ridiculous. One area in which the Ohio definitely has a clear advantage over the Yamato is in its anti-aircraft firepower. The Yamato, in common with a lot of Japanese ships relying far too heavily on, well, quite frankly, not very good short-range 25mm anti-aircraft guns. The Ohio has plenty of short-range 20mm anti-aircraft guns as well, 40 of them, but it backs those up with a dizzying array of 40mm, 76.2mm and 127mm anti-aircraft guns as well. In case you hadn't noticed, by the way, Runner 357 is not the only minor internet celebrity featured in this particular battle. The Colbert up in front of him, that's Isolate, another fellow Swede, and if you don't know him from his own Twitch livestream, you may have seen him broadcasting the Kings of the Sea tournaments with Flamu, and that's his firepower raining down on the Buffalo over there. The Colbert, in case you didn't realise, is basically a French Tier 10 version of the Atlanta, and yes, it is exactly as scary as it sounds. Although, to be completely fair, That was a serious misplay from the Buffalo, coming out in front of the island rather than taking shelter behind it. Left him exposed with nowhere to turn, in open water, in front of far too many guns. I mean, just look at the rate of fire of the Colbert. I think the only reason people aren't complaining about the Colbert as much as they complain about the Smolensk is there aren't as many Colberts around, and the Colbert doesn't get a smokescreen. But aside from that one crucial difference, I can confirm that getting shot at by one of those things is just as scary as getting shot at by a Smolensk. Fairly disappointing game so far for Runner. He hasn't really had much of an opportunity to show you exactly how scary these guns can be. And this is probably one of the best opportunities he's had so far, because the Bismarck, in common with other high-tier German battleships, has an internal turtleback armour arrangement, which means that it's highly susceptible to plunging fire at long range, but very well protected from fire coming in on a flat trajectory at close range, which makes it extremely difficult to citadel a German battleship at anything other than very long range. So he had a good chance of doing serious damage to the Bismarck, but, well, luck wasn't with him. The Großer Kurfürst, on the other hand, that was nearly 40,000 damage in a single salvo. One citadel and 5 penetrations, and that seems to have upset him. He's shooting back with his 12 16-inch guns. And yeah, no. That's fairly typical for a Großer Kurfürst. Now, the Großer Kurfürst does have the option of replacing its 16-inch guns with 16.5-inch or 420mm guns. But most German battleship captains who have that option don't bother taking it. The accuracy, particularly at these kind of ranges, is so bad that having the extra guns, even though they're lower caliber, is better, because it's very much a case of just throwing as much shit as possible at the wall and hoping some of it sticks. The German battleships really are much more comfortable at close to medium range, not just because of all of their secondaries, but because their turtleback armour gives them great protection at close to medium range, and their guns have a much better chance of actually hitting something. Managed to get some more shots out against the Großer Kurfürst there before he scuttled into safety behind the island. And a couple of shots hit the island, but yeah, a few more hits, another 6,000 damage or so. Not bad. 94,000 done. The team are down 1 kill, however, and they're only just about to take their first cap, so there's a fairly significant points deficit. And the enemy team have just managed to sink another one, putting them even further ahead on points. But it's not just the raw numbers the ships sunk, the caps held, and the points gained. It's where the enemy team have managed to sink all of those ships. It's all been happening over on the eastern end of the map, where the only friendly ship still alive is a Bismarck, and he's running for his life. And once the enemy ships over there have managed to dispose of him, they're going to be in a perfect position to sweep around and catch everybody else in a devastating crossfire. So Runner is anxiously quite keen to reduce the number of enemy ships shooting back, and while he doesn't get the kill, that honour goes to the Yamato. They have managed to eliminate that Großer Kurfürst. Now, turning like this has left him slow, and the Hakuryu on the enemy team has managed to get a torpedo attack off, but there's a lot of anti-aircraft firepower clustered up here. He does take the one hit, he uses his damage control since he was burning in 2 separate locations, triggers the heal, and it looks like some of the enemy team are taking advantage of that crossfire opportunity already. Judging by the volume of fire and the fact that it's all armour piercing, I'm going to hazard a guess that that's the enemy Minotaur. He's firing blind. I mean, you can see where the shots are coming from. 2 over penetrations. Not great, but we'll take everything that we can get at this point. Runner's in a very vulnerable position here, although for the moment it's only really the Minotaur who's taken advantage of it. Oh, I spoke too soon. Large volley of high explosive came in, presumably from the Zao. There's no way he's going to be able to go undetected here, not with carrier aircraft overhead. Shots out again, the Minotaur continuing to pour the fire in. No hits. And then you'll note that the friendly Midway is sending dive bombers overhead, and he has spotted the Minotaur. The Minotaur instantly pops his smoke, so he does not stay detected for long. But let's just cross our fingers and hope that he thinks he's safe inside the smoke, and he isn't going to move. Shots out. Yep, didn't kill him, but that was a lot of damage. 25,000 damage or so. The Minotaur's probably going to be smarting from that one. The question is, can Runner finish him off? Remember, he's firing blind here, he doesn't have anything to lock onto. It would be really nice if they could kill that Minotaur, because he's in a very, very dangerous position. He's effectively preventing the entire team from flipping Bravo. And that looks like the last opportunity they had to remove the Minotaur, because there's now a Bismarck moving up to reinforce him in Bravo, and the friendly Bismarck, who was the only surviving ship over on the far eastern end of the map, has finally been disposed of, which means all of the enemy ships that were pursuing him are now in a position to sweep around, sail to the west, and start pouring that crossfire in. Now, what can, and often does happen, particularly in random battles in situations just like this, where one team has a clear advantage, whether that's in caps, points, kills, positioning, or any combination of the above, is that simply winning doesn't seem to be good enough for them. They all suddenly get possessed by the urge to win harder. And stuff like this starts to happen. This is why you see teams snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. One team is winning, they've got a clear positional advantage, they don't have to do anything risky, but people just have to farm more kills, more damage. And it's understandable in a random battle where you're not really a team, you're just a collection of individuals who've been thrown together by the matchmaker. You're not playing for the benefit of everybody else on your team, you're actually competing against them to see who can finish on the top of the leaderboard at the end of the match. So players on the team who shouldn't really be taking any risks, who should really be just settling into their positions, enjoying their advantage and punishing the losing team as they are forced to take risks in order to try to turn the game around, well, it's as if a red mist suddenly descends and they start making mistakes. Like the Richie Lulu over there, who has left it far, far too late to turn and get into a position of safety, caught in open water, getting farmed by Isolate and the Colbert, with dive bombers jumping all over him, and with Runner in the Ohio just waiting for the opportunity to send a whole bunch of 18-inch gift packages into his side the second he turns to try to make it out of there. There's very little chance that Richelieu is going to survive this. In fact, Runner doesn't even want to shoot him. He wants to shoot the Kremlin. He's convinced that between Absoluti and the Gearing, and Isolate and the Colbert, they've probably got this. But since the guns are loaded and he doesn't actually have clear shots at the Kremlin yet anyway, what the hell, why not? Nah, an over-penetration. But Isolate and Absoluti there in the Gearing, they definitely have this. The Richelieu's days are numbered. And with the Richelieu dead, unbelievably, I mean, they're still losing. They're still way behind on points. And the enemy team have 2 caps, so they're gaining points at a faster rate. But they actually outnumber the enemy team for the first time. And not only that, the enemy team have pushed into the middle so hard and in such great numbers. Runner in the Ohio and Absolutely in the Gearing have now got them outflanked and are now in a position to catch the enemy team in a crossfire. So what just happened to the Richelieu is about to happen to the Kremlin. First, the Midway torpedo bombers. And it looks like there are at least a couple of torpedoes in the water from Absoluti's Gearing as well. It looks like the Kremlin's either stationary or reversing, so there's 0 chance he's going to dodge the Midway torpedoes, although they are airdropped torpedoes, so they don't do nearly as much damage as the Gearing torpedoes, which he was able to avoid, but he's caught in a crossfire. There are shots coming in from 2 different directions. Now, Runner doesn't want to give enough broadside to the Kremlin to hit him with the rear turrets, because that really would be asking for trouble. But with the rear turrets loaded, there was a slim chance that he was going to be able to do some damage, at least to the Zao, although it looks like, nope, none of those shots hit. But with the front turrets reloaded, he's got this Bismarck completely at his mercy, although at a range of, 5.9 kilometers, the Bismarck definitely managed to get some torpedoes away, although I think he was probably trying to kill Isolate and the Colbert. And judging by his comments in chat, that Colbert is completely OP. Yeah, he was trying to kill Isolate. The Kremlin is still backpedaling as fast as he can possibly go, which isn't very fast at all, and again isn't the best target, so shots out against the Zao. Far likely to do more damage shooting at a broadside cruiser than you are a bow-tanking battleship. You notice how runners slowed down. I realise this is going to come as a shock to a lot of battleship captains, but you have more than 2 throttle settings. You don't have to be either stopped or moving at full speed. Runner's got this Kremlin at his mercy. Why would you want to go cruising on by him at full speed and give him the opportunity to punch his shells into your broadside? He's the guy that has to take the chances. Let him be the one to make the mistakes. And he hasn't really made any mistakes, he's just been overwhelmed. I mean, he had the choice of sitting there and taking the torpedoes, or turning to get broadside and getting pummeled by an Ohio's 18-inch guns. His problem was that he was just outnumbered, overwhelmed, and he didn't have any support. Now, there's a very suspicious looking smokescreen over there, and it's definitely not absolutely in the gearing, so we're just going to stop here and see what happens. Because that's where the Minotaur was, wasn't it? Do you think he's still alive? I mean, he knows that there's an Ohio coming, because Runner was spotted by the Kremlin, but not anymore. And oh, look at that. Who could have predicted that that was going to happen? Salem to the rear. Radar, if you please, garçon. Yeah, there he is. The Salem only just caught him. The Salem, of course, being the premium version of the Des Moines that you can get in the Armory at Tier 10. And it has a shorter radar range than the Des Moines, but it was enough. Look at that. How much fun do you think that Minotaur's having right now? Yeah, probably not much. Well, if you can't take a joke, you shouldn't be in a light cruiser. Oh, he's smoked up again. Is he going to get away? Nope. Isolating the Colbert claims another victim. But Runner didn't exactly get out of that one scot-free. He had another double fire. He's been forced to use his damage control. He's got no heals left, so that 13,000 health is all he's got left. And the enemy team are still ahead, despite the fact that there's only 3 of them left. So let's get some of these caps flipped, shall we? Stop them gaining even more points. There's not a lot of this match left. Oh, and there's the Zhao that was shooting at him from over there. Spotted by the midway. Shots out. Not bad. A kill would have been better, because now the Zhao has the opportunity to shoot back. And with Runner's damage control on cooldown, 1 fire is going to kill him. But that Zhao is actually firing armor piercing. And yet Runner's on fire anyway. The fire came from 8-inch high explosive shells fired by the other Zhao down to the southeast. So burning, and with no way of putting the fire out, Runner's doomed. It's just a question of who gets the kill, and it's in fact the enemy Hakuryu carrier who finishes him off with a torpedo drop. However, they did manage to nail that first Zhao, so there are now only 2 enemy ships left. The Zhao who set Runner on fire, and the Hakuryu who finished him off. And they're both undetected. Although we have a pretty good idea of where they're going to be. They're going to be down here somewhere. And there's the Zhao. So the enemy team have gone from a position where they were winning. They had a clear advantage. They had more kills, they had more points, they had more caps. But just winning wasn't enough for them. They had to win harder, so they started taking unnecessary risks. And now they still have more points, but they don't have any of the caps, and they're outnumbered 2 to 1. But even with all 3 of the caps under their control, given the amount of time remaining, it's doubtful whether or not Runner's team can actually gain enough points to flip the lead. The Zhao gets caught by the Salem's radar, but he instantly slaps the Salem down and shuts that radar off with an 8-inch armor-piercing broadside salvo. And because the Salem was the only one actually spotting the Zhao, he's gotten away with shooting, and is able to keep motoring on out of there. Absoluti, who might have been able to spot the Zhao firing, and maintain spotting on him, couldn't do it because he was forced to hide inside his smokescreen, thanks to the Hakuryu's dive bombers. But now, all bets are off. Now they have to pursue these 2 surviving enemy ships, regardless of the risks, because with the destruction of the Salem, the enemy team are now so far ahead on points, there's absolutely no way Runner's team can make up the difference. They now must catch and kill both of them. And in a stark contrast to the Hipper from the earlier example, who just didn't know when to stop shooting, turn around and get the hell out of there, these 2 guys know the score. The Zhao held his fire until he was spotted anyway. And unlike a certain German Tier 8 heavy cruiser, who we may or may not have seen in similar circumstances earlier today, these two guys are running away from the enemy instead of charging straight towards them. Runner's getting a bit upset with the Midway, which is kind of understandable. The Midway's just circling around with his dive bombers. He doesn't really seem to be in any rush to attack, and there's only a minute and a half of this battle left. What exactly are you saving your dive bombers for? The Zhao is not going to leave the Hakuryu. He's going to stay as close to his anti-aircraft defences and his combat air patrol as he possibly can. And the longer that Zhao stays alive, the bigger the chance he's actually going to kill something. And that something's probably going to be Isolate, which is going to put this enemy team even further ahead on points and reduce the chances that they're going to be able to sink these two before the match ends in less than a minute. Finally, here come the Midway dive bombers. Looks like he was angling for a perfect drop. But all the time that he wasted just to get this one drop off, and considering the amount of time that the Midway wasted lining that drop up, it didn't do a huge amount of damage, and if it had happened 30 seconds to a minute ago, the Zhao might have burnt to death in the meantime, and Isolate, who just got taken out by the Hakuryu's torpedo bombers, would have had more time to pour fire into the Hakuryu here, along with Absoluti in the gearing. Oh god, I've just realised he's in a daring, not a gearing. Oh my god. Well, it's too late now. I've made my bed, I'll sleep in it. That's not important right now. What is important is that Absoluti does manage to kill the Hakuryu. And he manages it with 3 seconds of the game left. But because those two had the sense to just run when they needed to, one kill was not enough, and they held on to their win. And on that bombshell, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.